Julian Davenport needed a date, just for show. Vanessa Carter needed a miracle. A simple deal turned into something neither expected. But when love collides with wealth, ambition, and the past, can they find a future together? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Julian Davenport stared at the gold-trimmed wedding invitation on his desk, his jaw clenched as he read the names once more: Catherine Sinclair and Charles Wellington III. The woman who had promised to love him forever was marrying another man in just 2 weeks. "Sending me an invitation," Julian muttered, tossing it aside. "That's just cruel." He ran his fingers through his dark, perfectly styled hair and turned to look out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. The New York City skyline spread before him, a reminder of everything he'd built from nothing. At 38, Julian was one of the most successful real estate developers on the East Coast. His face had been on the cover of Forbes twice. He had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. But none of that had stopped Catherine from leaving him for Charles Wellington, his longtime business rival. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Davenport, your 2 o'clock cancelled. You have the rest of the afternoon free." Julian sighed. "Thank you, Linda." He grabbed his suit jacket and headed out. He couldn't stand being in the office another minute, not with that invitation mocking him. 30 minutes later, Julian found himself at a small cafe in Greenwich Village, far from the upscale restaurants he usually frequented. He liked it here precisely because nobody knew him. No business associates, no socialites looking to climb the ladder, no paparazzi hoping to catch him still nursing his heartbreak. "Coffee black," he told the waitress without looking up from his phone. "Wow, adventurous order," came a voice with a hint of amusement. "Let me guess, bad day? Or is ordering the plainest item on the menu just your thing?" Julian looked up, ready to dismiss whoever was interrupting his brooding. Instead, he found himself staring into the warmest brown eyes he'd ever seen. The waitress was beautiful in a completely natural way. Her dark skin glowed without makeup, and her curly hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Bad day," he admitted, surprised by his own honesty. "Bad month, actually." The waitress smiled. Her name tag read Vanessa. "In that case, may I suggest our chocolate chip cookies? They're still warm from the oven, and I have it on good authority that they cure most forms of misery." Despite himself, Julian felt the corner of his mouth twitch upward. "Add it to my order, then." Vanessa nodded and turned to leave. "Wait," Julian called after her. "Make it 2 cookies and join me. Your break must be coming up." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Bold of you to assume I want to spend my break listening to a stranger's problems." "I'll make it worth your while," Julian said, immediately regretting how it sounded. "I mean, I could use the company, that's all." Vanessa studied him for a moment, then shrugged. "My break's in 10 minutes, but I should warn you, I give terrible advice." 12 minutes later, Vanessa slid into the seat across from Julian with 2 plated cookies and her own cup of tea. "So what's got a guy in a $3,000 suit hiding out in a cafe that charges $3 for coffee?" she asked, taking a bite of her cookie. Julian blinked. "How did you know how much my suit costs?" "I didn't, but you just confirmed it." Vanessa grinned. "You're not the first rich guy to slum it here when life gets tough." Julian found himself chuckling. It felt strange. He hadn't laughed in weeks. "My ex-fiancée is getting married," he said, surprised again by his candor, "to my business rival." "Ouch," Vanessa winced. "That's exactly like a soap opera." "It gets better," Julian continued. "She sent me an invitation to the wedding." Vanessa nearly choked on her cookie. "Are you serious? Who does that?" "Catherine Sinclair. That's who." Julian took a sip of his coffee. "She claims she wants us to remain friends and celebrate her happiness. And you're not going, right? Please tell me you're not going." Julian looked down at his coffee. "I have to go." "You absolutely do not have to go," Vanessa countered. "In my world, not showing up would be seen as weakness, like I'm still heartbroken and can't face her." "Are you?" "Still heartbroken?" Julian paused. "No, I'm angry. She didn't just leave me. She leaked details to the press about why she left. said I was emotionally unavailable, that I cared more about making money than making her happy. Was she right? Vanessa asked bluntly. Julian looked startled. No one in his circle would dare ask him such a direct question. Maybe, he admitted. But I was building all of this for us. At least that's what I thought. Vanessa nodded, sipping her tea thoughtfully. So you're going to this wedding to... What? Prove something? To show everyone I've moved on, that I'm doing just fine without her, by showing up alone and looking miserable. Julian frowned. I was planning to bring a date. Let me guess, you don't actually have one lined up. Julian's silence was answer enough. Your break must be over by now, he said, changing the subject. Vanessa checked her watch and stood up. You're right. Some of us have real jobs to get back to. As she turned to leave, Julian had a sudden crazy idea. Wait, Vanessa, what if you came with me? Vanessa turned back, her expression incredulous. Excuse me? To the wedding, as my date? You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. It's one night. I'd pay you, of course. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. I'm not for hire, Mr. $3,000 suit. Julian backpedaled quickly. That's not what I meant. Think of it as acting, playing a role for one evening. I need someone who won't fit in with that crowd, someone real. You'd be perfect. Wow. You really know how to flatter a girl, Vanessa said sarcastically. Sorry, but I'm not interested in being your prop. She walked away, leaving Julian feeling like an even bigger jerk than before. The next day, Julian found himself back at the cafe. He told himself it was for the cookies, but he knew that was a lie. He wanted to apologize to Vanessa. When she approached his table, her expression was guarded. Back for more terrible advice? She asked. I came to apologize. What I said yesterday was inappropriate and offensive. Vanessa seemed surprised by his apology. Apology accepted. Most guys like you don't even realize when they've been offensive. Guys like me, rich, entitled, used to getting what they want. Julian couldn't argue with that assessment. Fair enough. Can I order now, or do you need to insult me some more first? Vanessa's lips twitched. One black coffee coming up. Want another cookie to go with your misery? Yes, please. When Vanessa returned with his order, Julian noticed she looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Rough night? He asked. She hesitated before answering. My mom's been sick. I was at the hospital until 3 a.m. I'm sorry to hear that. Is she going to be okay? She has heart problems, needs surgery, but... Vanessa trailed off. Insurance only covers part of it. I'm working double shifts, but medical bills don't wait. Julian nodded, suddenly feeling embarrassed about his own problems. Vanessa straightened her shoulders. Anyway, it's not your problem. Enjoy your coffee. As she walked away, Julian had an idea. A better one this time. When Vanessa took her break, Julian was still there. She approached his table cautiously. You're still here. I have a new proposal for you, Julian said, and I promise it's not offensive this time. Vanessa sat down, looking skeptical. I'm listening. Come to the wedding with me. One night, 6 hours maximum. In exchange, I'll pay for your mother's surgery. Vanessa's eyes widened. That's not funny. I'm not joking. Your mother gets the medical care she needs, and I get to save face at my ex's wedding. Everyone wins. Why? Would you do that for a stranger? Julian considered the question. Maybe I'm tired of being surrounded by fake people. Maybe I need someone real by my side to get through this thing. This is crazy, Vanessa said, shaking her head. Probably, Julian agreed. But my offer stands. Think about it. Julian left his business card on the table and walked out, leaving Vanessa staring after him. 3 days passed. Julian had almost given up hope when his private line rang. Julian Davenport speaking. It's Vanessa, from the cafe. Julian's heart rate picked up. I remember. Your offer, does it still stand? Yes. There was a long pause. My mom's surgery cost $80,000. With rehabilitation and medication, it's closer to $100,000. Consider it done. Another pause. If I do this, and I'm not saying I am, I need to know what I'm getting into. What exactly would this date involve? Just one evening of pretending to be my girlfriend. Making Catherine believe I've moved on. That's it. No funny business? None, Julian promised. I'm not that kind of guy. I'll need that in writing, a contract. Julian smiled. She was smart. I'll have my lawyer draw something up. One more thing, Vanessa said. Why me? You could hire a model or an actress. Julian thought about it. Because you're the first person who's made me laugh since Catherine left. Because you don't seem impressed by my money. Because you're real. Fine, Vanessa said after a moment. I'll do it. For my mom. Thank you, Julian said sincerely. I'll have everything arranged by tomorrow. As he hung up, Julian felt a strange sensation. For the first time since receiving that wedding invitation, he was actually looking forward to the event. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparations. Julian arranged for Vanessa's mother's surgery at the best cardiac center in New York. He had his personal stylist bring a selection of designer gowns to Vanessa's small apartment for her to choose from. This is ridiculous, Vanessa said, looking at the price tag on a red Valentino dress. This costs more than my rent for 6 months. It's a loan, Julian reminded her, just for the night. Vanessa ended up choosing the simplest gown, a deep, blue floor-length dress with minimal embellishment. Yet when she tried it on, even the jaded stylist gasped. That's the one, Julian said quietly. The night before the wedding, Julian picked Vanessa up to go over final details over dinner. Remember, we met at a charity event 3 months ago, he coached. We've been dating exclusively since then. I know the story, Vanessa said. We've been over it a dozen times. They were sitting in the back of his limousine, headed to a private dining room he'd reserved. Sorry, Julian said. I'm more nervous than I thought I'd be. About seeing Catherine. Again, Julian considered this. Strangely, no. I'm more concerned about subjecting you to these people. They can be judgmental. Vanessa gave him a look. I'm a black woman who waited tables to put myself through college. Trust me, I've dealt with judgment before. Julian smiled. You're right. You'll handle them better than I do. At dinner, they moved beyond their rehearsed backstory and began talking about real things. Julian learned that Vanessa had a degree in education, but couldn't find a teaching job that paid enough to help with her mother's medical bills. She learned that Julian had grown up poor, the son of a single mother who cleaned houses for the wealthy. Is that why you wanted to be rich? Vanessa asked. To escape poverty? Julian thought about it. Partly, but mostly to prove something. To show everyone who looked down on us that they were wrong about me. And now? What drives you now? That you've proven them wrong? The question caught Julian off guard. I don't know, he admitted. Habit, maybe. As the evening came to a close, Julian realized he'd enjoyed himself more than he had in years. There was something freeing about being with someone who had no agenda, who wasn't trying to get something from him. Thank you for tonight, he said as they stood outside her apartment building. For being yourself, Vanessa smiled. That's the only person I know how to be. Julian watched her enter the building before instructing his driver to take him home. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of anticipation rather than dread about the next day. The morning of the wedding arrived sunny and clear. Julian sent his driver to pick up Vanessa, arranging to meet her at the church. He wanted to make an entrance with her, wanted Catherine to see them together from the start. When Vanessa stepped out of the limousine at the church, Julian nearly forgot to breathe. The blue dress hugged her curves perfectly, and her hair had been styled in an elegant updo that showcased her long neck and beautiful face. You look, Julian struggled to find the right word. Stunning. Vanessa looked uncharacteristically nervous. Thanks. You clean up pretty well yourself, Julian offered. His arm. Ready to give the performance of a lifetime? Vanessa took a deep breath and slipped her arm through his. As ready as I'll ever be. As they walked up the steps of the church, they could feel eyes turning toward them. Julian heard whispers. He caught fragments. That's Julian Davenport. Catherine's ex. Who's that with him? Julian's grip on Vanessa's arm tightened slightly. Relax, she whispered. You look like you're heading to your execution, not your ex's wedding. Julian forced a smile. You're right. Let's show them how happy I am without her. They entered the church and were led to seats on the bride's side. Catherine's final twist of the knife. Julian spotted several familiar faces: business associates, society friends, people who had witnessed his relationship with Catherine from beginning to end. And then he saw her. Catherine standing just outside a side room, giving last-minute instructions to a bridesmaid. She was every bit as beautiful as he remembered, her blonde hair perfect, her slim figure showcased in a designer wedding gown. For a moment, Julian felt a pang of what might have been, but then Catherine looked up and saw him. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed as she took in Vanessa beside him. "She spotted us," Julian murmured. Vanessa surprised him by reaching over and taking his hand, intertwining their fingers. "Then let's give her something to see." She leaned in close as if sharing a private joke and laughed softly. Julian found himself smiling in response, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Catherine was still watching them, her expression unreadable. "I think it's working," Julian whispered. Vanessa squeezed his hand. "The show's just getting started." As the music began and guests took their seats, Julian felt a strange mix of emotions. He had come here to prove something, to show Catherine and everyone else that he wasn't broken by her rejection. But sitting next to Vanessa, feeling the warmth of her hand in his, he suddenly realized something unexpected. For the first time since Catherine had left him, Julian wasn't thinking about her at all. His thoughts were entirely focused on the woman beside him, a woman who had entered his life by chance but now seemed somehow essential. And as the wedding march began to play and everyone rose to watch the bride enter, Julian found himself stealing glances, not at Catherine, but at Vanessa. The thought that came to him then was both thrilling and terrifying. What if this fake relationship was about to become the most real thing in his life? The ceremony was everything Julian had expected: excessive, elegant, and dripping with wealth. Crystal chandeliers hung from the church ceiling, and exotic flowers adorned every surface. Catherine floated down the aisle like a vision in white, her eyes fixed on Charles Wellington III, who stood at the altar looking like he'd just won a prize. Julian felt Vanessa shift beside him. "You okay?" she whispered. He nodded, surprised to realize he actually was. Watching Catherine marry another man should have been torture, but instead he felt oddly detached from the scene, as if watching a movie about someone else's life. "She seems nice," Vanessa whispered as Catherine reached the altar, her smile dazzling under the veil. Julian suppressed a snort. "Wait until you meet her." The minister began the service, his voice echoing through the church. Julian found his attention wandering. He glanced at Vanessa's profile, the gentle curve of her cheek, the fullness of her lips, the way her eyelashes cast slight shadows when she blinked. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. Vanessa nudged Julian with her elbow. "Don't even think about it," she murmured. Julian grinned. "Wouldn't dream of it." A few people nearby glanced at them with disapproval, but Julian didn't care. For the first time in months, he was actually enjoying himself. The ceremony concluded with Catherine and Charles sealing their vows with a kiss. Guests applauded politely, and Julian joined in, clapping with what he hoped looked like genuine happiness for the couple. "That wasn't so bad, was it?" Vanessa asked as they followed the crowd out of the church. "The worst is yet to come," Julian warned her. "The reception is where people will really start talking to us." The reception was being held at the plaza in the Grand Ballroom. Julian's limousine joined the line of luxury cars waiting to drop off guests. Inside, Vanessa was fidgeting with her purse. "Nervous?" Julian asked. "A little," she admitted. "I've never been to the plaza before. Or her wedding this fancy. Just remember, you belong there as much as anyone else, more than most actually." Vanessa looked at him, surprised by the compliment. "Thanks." The Grand Ballroom was transformed into a wonderland of white and gold. Crystal glasses sparkled on tables draped with silk cloths. A string quartet played softly in one corner. Staff, in impeccable uniforms, circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. "Wow," Vanessa breathed, taking it all in. "This is excessive," Julian supplied. "I was going to say beautiful, but yeah, that too." Julian handed her a glass of champagne. From a passing waiter. "Liquid courage," he said. taking one for himself. They hadn't been there 5 minutes when the first of Julian's acquaintances approached. Melissa Worthington, a socialite who had been friends with Catherine for years. "Julian, darling," she exclaimed, air-kissing both his cheeks. "We weren't sure you'd come." "How brave of you." Her gaze slid to Vanessa, openly curious. Julian placed his hand at the small of Vanessa's back. "Melissa, this is Vanessa Carter, my girlfriend. Melissa Worthington is an old friend." Melissa's perfectly groomed eyebrows rose slightly. "Girlfriend? How wonderful! And what do you do, Vanessa?" Before Vanessa could answer, Julian cut in. "Vanessa is an educator. She's brilliant with children." It wasn't exactly a lie. Vanessa had told him about her degree in education and her dream of teaching. "How noble," Melissa said, in a tone that suggested she found it anything but. "Well, must mingle. Lovely to meet you, Veronica." "It's Vanessa," Vanessa corrected, but Melissa was already walking away. "And that," Julian said, "is just the beginning." Throughout the cocktail hour, Julian introduced Vanessa to countless people whose names she knew she would never remember. Most were polite but distant, clearly wondering how a woman like her had ended up with Julian Davenport. "They're wondering if you're a gold digger or if I've lost my mind," Julian murmured as they found a moment alone. "Let them wonder," Vanessa replied. "I don't care what these people think of me." Julian wished he could say the same. For too many years he'd cared deeply about the opinions of this crowd, these wealthy, privileged people who had once looked down on him and his mother. "Julian!" A female voice interrupted his thoughts. Catherine stood before them, resplendent in her wedding gown, her new husband at her side. Up close, she was even more beautiful, flawless skin, blue eyes, and the kind of blonde hair that seemed to glow from within. "Catherine," Julian replied evenly. "Congratulations to you both." Charles Wellington extended his hand. "Davenport, glad you could make it." Julian shook it briefly, then placed his arm around Vanessa's waist. "I'd like you to meet Vanessa Carter." "Vanessa, this is Catherine Sinclair. Wellington now, I suppose, and her husband Charles." Catherine's eyes assessed Vanessa from head to toe. "How lovely to meet you. I don't believe Julian has mentioned you before." "We've been keeping things private," Vanessa replied smoothly. "Julian values his personal life, especially after—" She let the words hang in the air. Catherine's smile tightened. "Yes, well, it's important to move on, isn't it?" "Very important," Julian agreed. "Sometimes the best things come into your life when you least expect them." He looked at Vanessa with what he hoped appeared to be genuine affection. Vanessa played her part perfectly, leaning into him and looking up with a warm smile. "Like walking into a cafe and finding someone who changes everything," she said softly. The look on Catherine's face was priceless, a mixture of surprise and something that looked suspiciously like jealousy. "Well," Charles said, clearly sensing the tension, "we should continue greeting our guests. Enjoy the evening." As they walked away, Julian let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You were amazing," he told Vanessa. The look on her face— "I think we convinced her," Vanessa agreed, "though I'm not sure she's as over you as she wants everyone to believe." Julian frowned. "What do you mean?" "The way she looked at you and at me. She wanted to hate me on sight." Julian hadn't noticed. He'd been too focused on playing his own part. "Well, you're certainly giving her a reason to be jealous. Every man in this room has been stealing glances at you all night." Vanessa laughed. "Now you're just being ridiculous." "I'm serious," Julian insisted. "That blue dress was definitely the right choice." Vanessa's cheeks darkened slightly, and Julian realized she was blushing. It was unexpectedly charming. Their conversation was interrupted by the announcement that dinner was being served. They found their table, which Julian was relieved to see was not at the front near the bridal party. Instead, they were seated with several business acquaintances and their spouses. Dinner was a lavish 5-course affair. Between the soup and the salad, Vanessa leaned over to Julian. "The woman across from us hasn't stopped staring since we sat down," she whispered. Julian glanced up to see Victoria Hamilton watching them with undisguised interest. Victoria was one of New York's most notorious gossips and one of Catherine's closest friends. "She's trying to figure out if we're really a couple," Julian explained quietly. She's Catherine's spy. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Then let's give her something to report back. Before Julian could ask what she meant, Vanessa reached over and wiped a non-existent crumb from the corner of his mouth, her touch lingering. She leaned in close as if sharing a private joke, and Julian found himself laughing in response. Victoria's eyes narrowed, and she turned to whisper something to her husband. "See?" Vanessa said. "Now she's dying to know what I said to make you laugh like that." Julian realized it had been a genuine laugh, something that had been rare in his life even before Catherine left him. "What would you have said? If this were real, I mean." Vanessa considered the question. "I'd probably have made a joke about the tiny portions, 5 courses, and I'm still hungry." Julian smiled. "We can get pizza after this if you want." "Deal." "But I picked the toppings." The ease of their conversation surprised him. It felt natural, unforced. If anyone at the table was doubtful about their relationship, Vanessa's relaxed behavior was surely convincing them otherwise. After dinner came dancing. Charles and Catherine took to the floor first, swaying to a romantic ballad. Other couples gradually joined them, and Julian knew they were expected to as well. "Shall we?" he asked, offering his hand. Vanessa hesitated. "I should warn you, I'm not great at fancy dancing." "Just follow my lead," Julian assured her. On the dance floor, Julian placed one hand at Vanessa's waist and took her other hand in his. They began to move to the music, and he was pleasantly surprised to find she was a natural dancer. Not great. "At dancing?" he teased. "You're doing perfectly." "Don't sound so surprised," Vanessa replied, but she was smiling. As they danced, Julian became increasingly aware of Vanessa's presence, the warmth of her hand in his, the scent of her perfume, the way her body moved in harmony with his. It was disconcerting, this sudden awareness. "Catherine is watching us," Vanessa murmured. Julian didn't turn to look. "Let her watch," he said, pulling Vanessa slightly closer. The song changed to something slower, more intimate. Couples around them moved closer together, arms wrapped around each other. Julian hesitated, unsure if Vanessa would be comfortable with that level of contact. But Vanessa made the decision for him, stepping closer and sliding her arms around his neck. Julian's hands went to her waist, and they swayed gently to the music. "Is this okay?" she asked quietly. "More than okay," Julian replied, surprised by the huskiness in his voice. Their eyes met, and for a moment Julian forgot they were pretending. Forgot about Catherine and the wedding, and all the reasons he'd brought Vanessa here. There was just this moment, this woman in his arms. The spell was broken when someone bumped into them, a slightly drunk groomsman who apologized profusely before staggering off toward the bar. Julian cleared his throat. "Maybe we should take a break from dancing." Vanessa nodded, stepping back from him. "I could use some fresh air, actually." Julian led her toward the terrace doors, where a few guests had gone to escape the heat of the ballroom. The night air was cool and refreshing after the stuffiness. "Inside. Better?" Julian asked. Vanessa nodded, leaning against the stone balustrade. "Much. Thank you for rescuing me from all those people asking where we met and how long we've been dating." "You handled it beautifully," Julian assured her. "Even..." Victoria Hamilton seemed convinced. "This whole night is surreal," Vanessa admitted. "Yesterday I was serving coffee, and tonight I'm at the plaza, pretending to be in love with a millionaire." "Billionaire," Julian corrected automatically. Then grimaced. "Sorry, that sounded incredibly arrogant," Vanessa laughed. "It did, but I was technically incorrect, so I'll allow it." Julian joined her laughter, then said more seriously, "Thank you for doing this. I know it can't be easy pretending all night. Some parts are easier than others," Vanessa replied, her eyes meeting his again. Before Julian could respond, the terrace doors opened, and Catherine stepped out. She was alone, and from the determined look on her face, she had been searching for them. "Julian, there you are," she said, her voice overly bright. "I was hoping to steal you for a dance, for old time's sake." Julian felt Vanessa tense beside him. "I'm not sure that's appropriate, Catherine," he said carefully. "It's your wedding day." Catherine waved a dismissive hand. "Charles won't mind." It's just a dance between old friends. She turned to Vanessa with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You don't mind, do you, Vanessa? I promise to return him safely. Before Vanessa could respond, Catherine had taken Julian's arm and was already leading him back inside. Julian threw an apologetic glance over his shoulder at Vanessa, who remained on the terrace, her expression unreadable. Inside, Catherine guided Julian to the dance floor, where a new song was just beginning. She slipped into his arms with the familiarity of someone who had been there many times before. I'm glad you came, she said, looking up at him. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, Julian admitted. But you did, and you brought a date. Catherine's tone was casual, but her eyes were scrutinizing his face. She's very different from your usual type. Julian kept his expression neutral. Maybe that's why it's working so well. Is it working well? Catherine pressed. You seem happy. I am, Julian said, surprised to realize it wasn't entirely a lie. What about you, Catherine? Are you happy with Charles? Something flickered in her eyes. Of course. Charles is wonderful. He's exactly what I need. But not what you want, Julian suggested, reading between the lines. Catherine's smile faltered. What I want has changed, Julian. I've changed. You never saw that because you were so focused on building your empire. And Charles sees you? All of you? Catherine didn't answer directly. It's different with Charles, more stable, less intense. Less passionate, Julian translated. Catherine's cheeks flushed. Passion isn't everything, Julian. Sometimes what looks like passion is just two people who bring out the worst in each other. Julian thought about that. Had he and Catherine brought out the worst in each other? Perhaps they had. Their relationship had been a roller coaster of highs and lows, of passionate arguments and equally passionate reconciliations. You might be right, he conceded. Maybe we weren't good for each other. Catherine looked genuinely surprised by his agreement. I didn't expect you to admit that. I've had time to think, Julian said. And maybe perspective. Catherine's gaze drifted to where Vanessa now stood near their table, talking with an elderly gentleman Julian recognized as Charles's grandfather. She seems nice, Catherine said with a trace of reluctance. Genuine. She is, Julian agreed. More genuine than anyone I've met in a long time. The song ended, and Julian stepped back from Catherine. Thank you for the dance, and I hope you'll be happy with Charles. I mean that. Catherine studied his face as if trying to determine if he was sincere. Thank you, Julian, that means a lot. She hesitated, then added, Don't let her get away. Women like that, who see the real you and stay anyway. They're rare. Before Julian could respond, Charles appeared at Catherine's side. Mind if I reclaim my wife? He asked, his tone light but his eyes watchful. Not at all, Julian replied, stepping back. Congratulations again, both of you. As he walked away, Julian felt strangely light, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. His conversation with Catherine had given him closure in a way he hadn't expected. He no longer felt angry or betrayed, just free. He made his way back to Vanessa, who was now alone watching the dancers. How was your dance with the bride? She asked as he approached. Enlightening, Julian replied. I think I finally understand why she left. And why's that? We brought out the worst in each other, Julian said simply. What looked like passion was just two people who didn't know how to love each other properly. Vanessa nodded slowly. That's surprisingly insightful. I'm not completely dense, Julian smiled. Just slow to realize certain things. Like what? Julian looked at her, really looked at her, the woman who had come into his life by chance and was now making him question everything he thought he wanted. Like the fact that the right person doesn't make you feel like you're constantly fighting for their approval. They make you feel like yourself, your best self. Vanessa held his gaze, a slight smile on her lips. And who is Julian Davenport's best self? I'm not entirely sure yet, Julian admitted. But I think I'm closer to finding out tonight than I have been in years. The moment was interrupted by the clinking of glasses, the signal for the bride and groom to kiss. Everyone turned to watch as Charles dipped Catherine dramatically and kissed her to applause and cheers. I think we've done our part here, Julian said quietly to Vanessa. Would you mind if we left early? Vanessa looked relieved. Not at all. My feet are killing me. In these heels anyway. Julian offered his arm. Let's make a discreet exit before anyone tries to rope us into another conversation. They slipped out during the cake cutting, when all eyes were on the bride and groom. Outside, Julian's driver was waiting with the limousine. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked, as they settled into the back seat. Julian looked at Vanessa. "I believe. I promised you pizza." Vanessa's face lit up. "You were serious about that?" "Completely serious. I know a place in the village that stays open late." 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a small, dimly lit pizzeria. Vanessa still in her evening gown and Julian in his tuxedo. They had ordered a large pizza with extra cheese and pepperoni. "This is definitely an improvement over those tiny portions at the wedding," Vanessa said, taking a bite of her slice. Julian smiled, watching her enjoy the simple meal. He found her genuineness refreshing after the artificial politeness of the wedding. "Thank you," he said suddenly. Vanessa looked up. "For what?" "For making what could have been a miserable evening into something unexpectedly nice." Vanessa wiped her hands on a napkin. "It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Your friends are judgmental, but not as horrible as I expected." "They're not really my friends," Julian admitted. "More like social acquaintances, business connections." "Don't you have real friends?" Vanessa asked. Julian thought about it. "A few, but success changes things. People want things from you, or they're intimidated by you. It makes genuine connections difficult." "That sounds lonely." Julian hadn't thought of it that way before, but she was right. Despite his wealth and success, he was lonely. "I suppose it is." "Well, now you have one genuine connection," Vanessa said lightly. "Me. I've seen you at your most vulnerable, facing your ex at her wedding, and I still think you're okay." Julian laughed. "Just okay. Don't push it, billionaire boy. Okay is a compliment coming from me." Their easy banter continued as they finished their pizza. Julian couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so comfortable with someone, so free to be himself without calculation or pretense. When they stepped outside, the night air had turned cooler. Julian noticed Vanessa shiver slightly in her sleeveless gown. "Here," he said, removing his jacket and placing it around her shoulders. "Thanks," Vanessa said, pulling it closer around her. "Such a gentleman." "Don't sound so surprised," Julian teased. "I have my moments." His driver had followed them to the pizzeria and was waiting nearby. Julian opened the car door for Vanessa, but before she could get in, she turned to face him. "Julian," she said, her expression suddenly serious, "I need to ask you something. What is it tonight when we were dancing? Was it all just for show? Or was there something real happening between us?" Julian was taken aback by her directness. He could have deflected or given a non-committal answer, but something about Vanessa made him want to be honest. "It wasn't all for show," he admitted. "At least not for me." Vanessa searched his face as if looking for the truth in his words. "Not for me either," she said softly. They stood there for a moment, the confession hanging in the air between them. Julian found himself drawn closer to her, his eyes dropping to her lips. "I want to kiss you," he said. "And not for anyone else's benefit. Just because I want to." Vanessa's lips curved into a smile. "What's stopping you?" Julian closed the distance between them, his hands gently cradling her face as he kissed her. It was soft and tentative at first, then deeper as Vanessa responded, her arms sliding around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "That was definitely not pretend," he murmured. "Definitely not," Vanessa agreed, her eyes still closed. The moment was perfect until reality intruded in the form of Julian's ringing phone. He reluctantly pulled away to check it, frowning at the screen. "I have to take this," he said apologetically. "It's my London office." Vanessa nodded, stepping back. "Of course." Julian answered the call, turning slightly away as he spoke. The conversation was brief but clearly important, given his serious expression. "I'm sorry about that," he said as he ended the call. "There's an issue with a project in London. Nothing disastrous, but I'll need to make some calls tonight." "I understand," Vanessa said, though her smile had dimmed slightly. Julian hesitated. "Let me take you home first." The drive to Vanessa's apartment was quieter than before, the easy conversation replaced by a charged silence. Julian's mind was torn between the kiss they had shared and the business crisis demanding his attention. When they reached her building, Julian walked Vanessa to the door. "I had a wonderful evening," he said. "Better than I could have imagined." "So did I," Vanessa replied. She slipped off his jacket and handed it back to him. "Thank you for everything, for my mom's surgery, for tonight." "You earned it," Julian said. "You were the perfect date." An awkward pause followed, neither quite sure how to end the evening after what had happened between them. "I should go in," Vanessa finally said, "and you have calls to make." "Yes," Julian agreed, "but I'd like to see you again, not for pretend this time, for real." Vanessa's eyes met his. "I'd like that too," she said softly. Julian leaned in and kissed her again, briefly but with promise. "I'll call you tomorrow," he said. As he walked back to the car, Julian felt like a different man than the one who had entered that cafe weeks ago. He had gone to the wedding hoping to show Catherine he'd moved on, never expecting to actually begin doing so. But as his car pulled away from Vanessa's building, Julian's phone rang again, and again. The business world was calling, demanding his attention as it always did. By the time he reached his penthouse, he had a dozen messages and emails marked urgent. Julian loosened his tie as he entered his home office. He had promises to keep, to Vanessa but also to his company, his employees, his investors. As he sat down at his desk, the weight of those responsibilities settled on his shoulders once more. The man who had kissed Vanessa outside the pizzeria seemed suddenly far away, replaced by Julian Davenport, billionaire businessman with an empire to run. The question now was whether those two versions of himself could coexist, or if one would inevitably win out over the other. 3 days passed without a word from Julian. Vanessa tried not to check her phone constantly, but she couldn't help it. He had promised to call the next day, and yet nothing. "He's just busy," she told herself as she prepared for her shift at the cafe. Billionaires have a lot going on, but a nagging voice in her head kept reminding her of the reality. Men like Julian Davenport didn't end up with women like her. They had their fun, made promises they never intended to keep, and moved on. The worst part was that she'd let herself believe, even for one night, that what happened between them was real. That kiss outside the pizzeria had felt genuine, a connection that went beyond their arrangement. "Good morning, honey," her mother called from the living room. Rose Carter was resting on the couch, still recovering from her heart surgery. Vanessa forced a smile as she entered. "Morning, Mom. How are you feeling today?" "Better than yesterday," Rose replied, studying her daughter's face. "Which is more than I can say for you. Still no call from your mystery man?" Vanessa hadn't told her mother the full story about Julian, just that she'd met someone who had generously offered to help with the medical bills. "He's probably busy," Vanessa said, echoing her earlier thoughts. "It doesn't matter anyway. What we had was temporary." Rose raised an eyebrow. "Doesn't look temporary from the way your face falls every time your phone doesn't ring. I'm just disappointed, that's all. I thought he was different." "Different from what? You've barely told me anything about this man." Vanessa sighed. "His name is Julian Davenport. He's wealthy. Very wealthy." Rose's eyes widened slightly. "The Julian Davenport, the real estate developer? You know who he is?" "I read the papers, honey. He's always in the business section, or the society pages." Rose looked concerned. "How did you get mixed up with someone like that?" "It's a long story," Vanessa replied, checking the time. "And I'm going to be late. For work." "We'll talk when you get home," Rose said firmly. "I want to hear everything." Vanessa kissed her mother's cheek. "Love you, Mom." "Love you too, baby." "And Vanessa," Rose called as her daughter headed for the door. "If he's half the man his company profile makes him out to be, he'll call." Vanessa wasn't so sure, but she appreciated her mother's optimism. At the cafe, the morning rush kept her too busy to dwell on Julian. But during a lull, her mind wandered back to the wedding, to dancing in his arms, to that kiss that had felt like the beginning of something real. The bell over the door jingled, and Vanessa looked up automatically. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw Julian entering the cafe. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his normally impeccable appearance slightly rumpled. Vanessa, he said, approaching the counter. Can we talk? She glanced at her manager, who nodded. Take 5, Vanessa. Julian led her to a quiet corner table, away from the few other customers. I owe you an apology, he began. I promised to call and then I didn't. 3 days, Vanessa said, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. It's been 3 days. Julian ran a hand through his hair. I know. I'm sorry. There was a crisis with the London project. I had to fly out there the morning after the wedding. I just got back last night. You couldn't send a text. Hey, flying to London, talk later? That takes 10 seconds, Julian. He had the grace to look ashamed. You're right. I should have. But things were chaotic and honestly, I'm not used to. He trailed off. Not used to what? Basic courtesy? Not used to having someone in my life who expects those things from me, Julian admitted. Someone who matters enough that I should think about how my actions affect them. Vanessa softened slightly. Well, you have a lot to learn about relationships. I do, he agreed, and I'd like the chance to learn with you. Vanessa studied his face, trying to determine if he was sincere. Why? Why what? Why me? You could date models, actresses, women from your social circle. Why would you want to be with someone like me? Julian leaned forward, his eyes intent on hers. Because you're real, Vanessa. You're the most authentic person I've ever met. You don't care about my money or my status. You call me out when I'm being an idiot. And when I'm with you, I feel like myself, not Julian Davenport, the billionaire, just Julian. Vanessa wanted to believe him, but caution held her back. This isn't a fairy tale, Julian. I'm not Cinderella and real life doesn't work like the movies. We come from completely different worlds. I know, Julian said, and I'm not saying it. Would be easy. But I think what we started at the wedding, what we both felt, is worth exploring, don't you? Before Vanessa could answer, her manager called from behind the counter. Vanessa, break's over. We're getting busy again. Vanessa stood up. I have to get back to work. Julian nodded. Of course, but can I see you tonight? Let me take you to dinner. Vanessa hesitated. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please, Julian said. One real date. If you still think we're too different afterward, I'll respect that, but at least give us a chance. Looking into his eyes, Vanessa found herself nodding. Okay, one date. Julian's smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. I'll pick you up at 7. As he left, Vanessa tried to temper the hope blooming in her chest. One date didn't mean anything would come of this, but she couldn't deny the flutter of excitement at seeing him again. That evening, Vanessa agonized over what to wear. Nothing. In her closet seemed right. She finally settled on a simple burgundy dress. Not too fancy, but nicer than what she'd wear to work. You look beautiful, her mother said from the doorway of Vanessa's bedroom. Thanks, Mom. Vanessa turned from the mirror. I'm not sure why I'm even doing this. It's probably a mistake. Rose came in and sat on the edge of the bed. After our talk this afternoon, I'm not so sure it is. This man paid for my surgery without even knowing me. That says something about his character. Or about how much money he has to throw around. Vanessa countered. Rich people don't part with their money easily, believe me, Rose said. I've cleaned houses for enough wealthy families to know that. Vanessa smiled at her mother. Since when are you the optimist in this family? Since my daughter caught the eye of a man who might actually be worthy of her, Rose replied. She reached for Vanessa's hand. Just promise me you'll give him a fair chance, not just dismiss him because you're scared. I'm not scared, Vanessa protested. Rose gave her a knowing look. You're terrified. Not of him, but of what might happen if you let yourself fall for him. Before Vanessa could respond, the intercom buzzed. Julian was here. Downstairs, Julian waited in the lobby of Vanessa's apartment building. He had debated sending a car for her, but decided that would feel too impersonal. Instead, he'd come himself, even though his driver was waiting outside. When Vanessa stepped off the elevator, Julian's breath caught. She looked beautiful in a simple burgundy dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Hi, he said, suddenly feeling like a teenager on his first date. Hi, Vanessa replied, a hint of shyness in her smile. You look amazing, Julian told her, meaning every word. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. He was wearing a tailored suit, but not the intimidating kind he wore for business. Something more relaxed, though still clearly expensive. "Shall we?" Julian offered his arm and Vanessa took it. Outside, his driver opened the door of a sleek black car, not the limousine from the wedding, but still luxury on wheels. "Where are we going?" Vanessa asked as they settled into the back seat. "Ai mai. Thought we'd try something different tonight," Julian said. "No fancy restaurants, no pretense, just good food and a chance to talk. Really talk." The car took them to Brooklyn, to a small, family-owned Italian restaurant tucked away on a quiet street. It was warm and inviting, with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. "This is wonderful," Vanessa said, as they were led to a corner table. "How did you find this place?" "My mother loved it," Julian replied. "She used to save up to bring me here on my birthday every year. The owner, Mario, treated us like royalty, even though we were hardly his wealthiest customers." As if on cue, an older man with silver hair and a broad smile approached their table. "Hi, Julian Davenport, it's been too long." Julian stood to embrace the man. "Mario, it's good to see you." "Let me look at you," Mario said, holding Julian at arm's length. "Success agrees with you, my boy. Your mother would be so proud." Julian's smile held a hint of sadness. "I hope so." "She is. I know it." Mario turned to Vanessa. "And who is this beautiful lady?" "This is Vanessa Carter," Julian introduced her. "Vanessa, this is Mario Rossetti, the best chef in New York." Mario kissed Vanessa's hand with old-world charm. "Any friend of Julian's is family here. I will prepare something special for you both." After Mario left, Vanessa looked at Julian with new interest. "You've never mentioned your mother before." "She died 8 years ago," Julian said quietly. "Cancer. She didn't live to see how successful the company became." "I'm sorry," Vanessa said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. Julian turned his palm up to meet hers. "She was amazing. Raised me alone, worked 3 jobs sometimes to make ends meet. When I started my first real estate venture, she gave me her life savings, $15,000. Not much by industry standards, but it was everything to her." "She sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was," Julian agreed, "and she would have liked you." "Why do you say that?" "Because you remind me of her in some ways. The same strength, the same realness. She never pretended to be anything she wasn't." Vanessa smiled, touched by the comparison. "Tell me more about her, about your childhood." And he did. Over wine and Mario's special homemade pasta, Julian shared stories he rarely told anyone. About growing up in a small apartment in Queens, about his mother working as a housekeeper for wealthy families, about his determination to create a different life for them both. "I used to go with her sometimes to the houses she cleaned," Julian said. "I'd sit quietly and do my homework while she worked. Those houses fascinated me, how beautiful they were, how different from our apartment. I started drawing floor plans when I was 10, imagining what kind of houses I would build someday." "And now you build them," Vanessa said. "Now I build them," Julian agreed. "The irony is, I've spent so much time creating beautiful spaces for other people that I've never really made a home for myself." Vanessa understood then. The loneliness beneath his success, the emptiness that all his wealth couldn't fill. "What about you?" Julian asked. "You've heard my life story. I want to hear yours." Vanessa told him about growing up in a modest but happy home, about losing her father to a heart attack when she was 12, about her mother taking on extra jobs to support them. She shared her dream of becoming a teacher, of making a difference in children's lives. "Why haven't you pursued teaching?" Julian asked. "You have the degree." "Starting salaries for teachers in this city barely cover rent," Vanessa explained. "And with my mum's medical expenses, the cafe pays better, especially with tips." Julian nodded thoughtfully but didn't comment. Vanessa appreciated that he didn't immediately offer to solve her problems with money. That would have felt like charity rather than understanding. As the evening progressed, they found themselves laughing, sharing, connecting in a way neither had expected. The restaurant gradually emptied, but Mario didn't rush them, bringing them dessert and coffee as they continued talking. "I can't believe how late it is," Vanessa said finally, glancing at her watch. "We've been here for hours." "Time flies," Julian said. looking at her with warmth in his eyes. "I've enjoyed every minute." When the bill came, Mario waved away Julian's credit card. "For you, Julian, there is no charge. Just promise not to stay away so long next time." "Mario, you have to let me pay," Julian insisted. No. You paid plenty when you helped my nephew with his tuition," Mario said. "Some debts can never be repaid." Outside, the night air was cool and crisp, stars twinkling overhead. Julian's driver was waiting, but Julian turned to Vanessa. "Would you like to walk for a bit? It's a beautiful night." Vanessa nodded. "I'd like that." Julian spoke briefly to his driver, who nodded and drove away. Then they began to stroll along the quiet street, Julian's hand finding Vanessa's, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "You didn't tell me you paid for Mario's nephew's college," Vanessa said. Julian looked embarrassed. "It wasn't something I thought to mention. Do you do that kind of thing often, help people?" Julian shrugged. "When I can, when it makes a difference. Why don't you talk about it? Most rich people I know love to brag about their charitable giving." "It's not charity," Julian said firmly. "It's connection. My mother always taught me that we rise by lifting others. The money doesn't mean anything if it's not helping someone." Vanessa stopped walking and turned to face him. "You keep surprising me, Julian Davenport. Is that a good thing?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "A very good thing," she said softly. Julian stepped closer, his hand gently touching her cheek. "May I kiss you?" Instead of answering, Vanessa rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. Unlike their first kiss, this one was unhurried, a gentle exploration that deepened gradually. Julian's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally broke apart, Vanessa rested her head against Julian's chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. "I don't want this night to end," Julian murmured against her hair. "Neither do I," Vanessa admitted. "But it has to. I have the early shift tomorrow." Julian sighed. Reality intrudes. They began walking again, making their way slowly back toward the main street where they could find a taxi. "When can I see you again?" Julian asked. "I'm off Wednesday," Vanessa replied. "Mom has a follow-up appointment at the hospital in the morning, but I'm free after that." "Wednesday it is," Julian said, squeezing her hand. "And this time I promise I won't disappear for 3 days." Vanessa smiled up at him. "I'll hold you to that." A taxi approached, and Julian hailed it. As they rode back to Vanessa's apartment, they sat close together, hands still intertwined, each lost in thoughts about the evening they'd shared. At her door, Julian kissed her again, slower and deeper than before. "Good night, Vanessa." "Good night, Julian." As Vanessa entered her apartment, she found her mother still awake, reading in the living room. "Well?" Rose asked, putting down her book. "How was it?" Vanessa couldn't contain her smile. "It was perfect." Over the next few weeks, Julian and Vanessa settled into a rhythm. They saw each other whenever Vanessa wasn't working. Casual dinners, walks in the park, quiet evenings at her apartment, where Julian charmed Rose with his genuine interest in her stories. To Vanessa's surprise, Julian seemed as comfortable in her modest apartment as he was in his penthouse. He never complained about the small space or the simple meals they sometimes shared. If anything, he seemed to prefer the coziness of her home to the emptiness of his own. But their different worlds inevitably created challenges. Julian had business, commitments that sometimes took him away for days. Vanessa had her job at the cafe and her responsibilities to her mother. Their schedules rarely aligned perfectly, and then there were the cultural differences. Julian was used to a world of luxury and privilege, while Vanessa had grown up understanding the value of every dollar. Sometimes those differences created misunderstandings, like the time Julian casually suggested they fly to Paris for the weekend, as if it were as simple as deciding to go to a movie. Or when Vanessa hesitated to order the most expensive item on a menu even though Julian was paying. "It's just money," Julian would say, not understanding her discomfort. "It's not just money to most people," Vanessa would reply. But despite these occasional bumps, they were drawn to each other in a way neither could deny. Julian found in Vanessa a genuineness that was rare in his world. Vanessa discovered that beneath Julian's wealthy exterior was a man of surprising depth and kindness. One evening, about a month into their relationship, Julian arrived at Vanessa's apartment with a large envelope. "What's this?" Vanessa asked as they settled on the couch. Julian looked uncharacteristically nervous. "Open it and see." Inside the envelope, Vanessa found papers, legal documents of some kind. As she scanned them, her eyes widened. "Julian, is this what I think it is?" He nodded. "It's the deed to a building, a former community center in Brooklyn that's been vacant for years. I bought it last week." Vanessa looked confused. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I bought it for you," Julian said, "or rather for your dream." "My dream? To teach, to make a difference." Julian took her hand. "The building can be renovated into a learning center for underserved kids. After-school programs, tutoring, arts classes, whatever you think would benefit the community most." Vanessa stared at him, speechless. "You would be the director," Julian continued. "Full creative control, a staff to help you, and a salary that would allow you to quit the cafe. Your mother would have the best health insurance plan available." "Julian, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he urged. "This isn't charity, Vanessa, it's an investment. In you, in your abilities, in your dream. I've seen how you are with children, how you light up when you talk about teaching. We're meant to do this." Vanessa felt overwhelmed. "It's too much. You're talking about millions of dollars. Money I have. Plenty of," Julian said dismissively. "What I don't have enough of is the chance to support someone He hesitated. "Someone I care deeply about, in doing what they were born to do." Vanessa heard what he hadn't quite said. They hadn't yet used the word love, though it hovered in the air between them more and more frequently. "I need to think about this," she said finally. "It's a huge responsibility." Julian nodded. "Take all the time you need. The building isn't going anywhere." Later, that night, after Julian had gone, Vanessa discussed the offer with her mother. "He's giving you the chance to fulfill your dream," Rose said. "Why are you hesitating?" "Because it ties me to him, Mom. What happens if our relationship doesn't work out? Do I lose the center too?" "Did he say that?" "No," Vanessa admitted. "But it feels complicated." Rose took her daughter's hand. "Life is complicated, honey. But sometimes we overthink things instead of just accepting the gifts that come our way." Vanessa sighed. "I just don't want to lose myself in his world, you know. His solution to everything is to throw money at it." "Is that fair?" Rose asked gently. "From what you've told me, he seems to understand that money isn't everything. This gift, it's not about buying your affection. It's about seeing who you truly are and wanting to support that." Vanessa knew her mother was right. Julian's offer came from a place of genuine caring, not control or obligation, and the idea of running a learning center, of finally using her education degree to help children who needed it most. It was everything she'd ever wanted. The next day, Vanessa called Julian. "Yes," she said when he answered. "My answer is yes, but I have conditions." "Name them," Julian replied. "The center belongs to the community, not to me or to you. We set up a board of directors, local parents, educators, community leaders. I'll be the director, but I answer to them, not to you. And the funding is guaranteed for at least 5 years, regardless of what happens between us." There was a pause, then Julian chuckled. "You've given this a lot of thought." "I have," Vanessa said. "This is too important to get wrong." "I agree." "To all your conditions," Julian said, "and I'm adding one of my own. You let me take you to dinner tonight to celebrate." Vanessa smiled. "Deal." That evening, Julian surprised her by taking her to a restaurant not unlike Mario's. Small, family-owned, with excellent food and no pretension. He seemed to be learning what made her comfortable. Over dessert, Julian reached across the table for her hand. "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about." "More surprises?" Vanessa asked, only half joking. "Not exactly. It's about us." Julian looked nervous again, a rare sight. "These past weeks have been the happiest of my life. Being with you has changed me, Vanessa. Changed how I see the world, how I see myself." Vanessa's heart began to beat faster. "Julian, I love you," he said simply. "I think I've been falling in love with you since that first day at the cafe, when you called me out on my boring coffee order. You saw me, the real me, from the beginning." Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. I love you too, she admitted, even though it terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because I never thought I'd fall in love with someone like you. Because our worlds are so different. Because I'm afraid that someday you'll wake up and realize that I don't belong in your life. Julian squeezed her hand. You are my life now, Vanessa. The rest of it, the money, the business, the social obligations, that's just stuff. It's not who I am. Not anymore. Vanessa wanted to believe him, and looking into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, she did. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As they left the restaurant, Julian's phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. It's my office, I should take this. Vanessa nodded, stepping away to give him privacy. She watched as Julian spoke, his expression growing more serious by the second. I understand, he was saying. Book me on the first flight out. Have the legal team meet me there. When he hung up, he turned to Vanessa, with regret in his eyes. There's a problem with the Singapore project. I need to fly out tonight. Tonight? Vanessa echoed. But what about our celebration? I know, and I'm sorry. But this is an emergency. Millions of dollars are at stake. Jobs too. And just like that, Vanessa was reminded of the reality of loving Julian Davenport. His world would always have demands that took him away from her, emergencies that couldn't wait. How long will you be gone? She asked, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. A few days, maybe a week. I'll call you every day, I promise. Vanessa nodded, forcing a smile. Of course, you have to go, I understand. Julian pulled her into his arms. This doesn't change anything between us. I meant what I said, I love you. I love you too, Vanessa replied. And she did. But as Julian's driver appeared to whisk him away to his private jet, she couldn't help wondering if love would be enough to bridge the vast differences in their lives. Julian kissed her one more time, promised to call when he landed, and then was gone, back to his world of high-stakes business and international deals, leaving Vanessa standing alone on the sidewalk. As she hailed a taxi to take her home, Vanessa thought about the learning center, about Julian's declaration of love, about the future they might build together. It was everything she could have dreamed of, and yet, watching him leave so suddenly had left her with a lingering doubt. Could a man like Julian, with his global business empire and constant demands on his time, ever truly be present in a relationship? Or would she always come second to the emergencies and crises of his work? Vanessa wanted to believe that their love was strong enough to overcome these obstacles. But as the taxi drove through the nighttime streets of New York, she couldn't help wondering if loving Julian Davenport would mean learning to live with his absences, with always being just one crisis away from watching him leave. When she arrived home, there was a text message from Julian. Already miss you. Will call when I land. I love you. Vanessa smiled, her doubts receding slightly. They were just beginning this journey together. There would be challenges, yes, but also joy and growth and love. As she drifted off to sleep that night, Vanessa thought about how far they'd come since that first meeting in the cafe. From a business arrangement to fake girlfriend to falling. Genuinely in love. It was a journey neither of them could have predicted. And the journey, she realized, was just beginning. Julian's trip to Singapore stretched from days into weeks. What had initially seemed like a simple contract dispute had revealed deeper problems. Potential fraud, missing funds, and a partner who had disappeared with millions of dollars. I'm sorry, Julian said during their nightly video call. It was morning in Singapore, and he looked exhausted, his normally perfect appearance rumpled from too many hours in the office. I thought I'd be home by now. Vanessa tried to hide her disappointment. It's okay, I understand. But did she really? The learning center renovations had begun, and every day brought decisions that she wanted to share with Julian. She missed his physical presence, his touch, his smile. The contractor needs final approval on the classroom layouts, she told him. I've emailed you the plans. Julian nodded, but she could tell his mind was elsewhere. I trust your judgment, Vanessa. Whatever you decide will be perfect. But I want your input, she insisted. This is our project. Julian ran a hand through his hair. I know, and I'm sorry I can't be more present right now, but this situation is critical. If we don't resolve it, the company could lose hundreds of millions. The company. Always the company. Vanessa was beginning to understand that Julian's business wasn't just what he did, it was who he was, a core part of his identity that she would always have to share him with. "I understand," she said again, though the words were beginning to sound hollow even to her own ears. "I'll make it up to you," Julian promised. "As soon as this is resolved, we'll take a real vacation, just the two of us." Vanessa smiled, but the doubt remained. Would there ever be a time when Julian's work wasn't calling him away? Or would their relationship always be interruptions and rescheduled plans and promises to make it up later? After the call ended, Vanessa went to check on her mother, who was watching television in the living room. "How's Julian?" Rose asked. "Still in Singapore, still dealing with the crisis." Vanessa sat down beside her mother. Rose studied her daughter's face. "You're starting to have doubts, aren't you?" "Is it that obvious? Only to someone who knows you as well as I do." Rose took Vanessa's hand. "Talk to me, baby," Vanessa sighed. "I love him, Mom. I really do. But I'm starting to wonder if loving him means always being second priority in his life. If every important moment will be interrupted by a crisis that can't wait. That's the reality of being with a man like Julian," Rose said gently. "His work will always demand his attention. I know, and I don't want him to change who he is. I fell in love with Julian, all of him, including his drive and ambition. I just wonder if there's room in that life for me, for us." "Have you talked to him about this?" Vanessa shook her head. "How can I? He's under enough pressure right now." "But these feelings won't go away on their own," Rose pointed out. "You need to be honest with him, honey, and with yourself." Vanessa knew her mother was right, but the conversation would have to wait until Julian returned, if he ever did. Just when Vanessa had begun to think Julian might never come back from Singapore, he called with good news. "We've resolved the situation," he told her, sounding more upbeat than he had in weeks. "I'm flying home tomorrow." "Really?" Vanessa couldn't keep the excitement from her voice. "That's wonderful. I've missed you so much," Julian said. "These 5 weeks have been torture." 5 weeks. It hardly seemed possible that they'd been apart for so long. "I've missed you too." "I want to see you as soon as I land," Julian said. "My flight gets in at 3 p.m. Can I come straight to your place?" "Of course," Vanessa replied. "Mom will be at her book club until 6, so we'll have some time alone." "Perfect. I love you, Vanessa." "I love you too, Julian." After they hung up, Vanessa felt a flutter of nerves. She wanted desperately to see Julian, to be in his arms again. But she also knew they needed to have a serious conversation about their future, about whether they could make this relationship work, despite the demands of his life. The next day, Vanessa cleaned the apartment and prepared Julian's favorite meal, a simple pasta dish her mother had taught her to make. She wore the blue dress he loved, the one that matched her eyes, and waited anxiously for his arrival. When the doorbell rang at exactly 4 p.m., Vanessa took a deep breath and went to answer it. Julian stood in the hallway looking tired but happy. Before she could speak, he wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly as if afraid she might disappear. "God, I've missed you," he murmured into her hair. Vanessa melted into his embrace, all her doubts momentarily forgotten. "I've missed you too." Julian pulled back slightly to look at her, then kissed her with a hunger that took her breath away. Vanessa responded in kind, the weeks of separation making their reunion all the more intense. When they finally broke apart, Julian pressed his forehead to hers. "I never want to be away from you that long again," Vanessa smiled, though a part of her wondered if that was a promise he could keep. "Come in. I made dinner." Julian followed her into the apartment, setting down his briefcase and shrugging off his suit jacket. "It smells amazing in here." "My mom's pasta recipe," Vanessa explained. "Your favorite." Julian pulled her into his arms again. "You're my favorite." They sat down to eat, Julian telling her about the resolution of the Singapore crisis, Vanessa updating him on the Learning Center progress. It felt good, normal, as if they were picking up exactly where they'd left off. But the conversation Vanessa needed to have still loomed ahead of them, casting a slight shadow over her enjoyment of their reunion. "What is it?" Julian asked eventually, noticing her distraction. "You seem like you have something on your mind." Vanessa set down her fork. "I do, actually. These past 5 weeks have given me a lot of time to think. About us. About our future. Julian's expression turned serious. That sounds ominous. It's not meant to be, Vanessa assured him. I love you, Julian, that hasn't changed, but being apart for so long made me realize some things about what it means to be with you. What things? Vanessa chose her words carefully. Your work is demanding. It takes you away often with little warning, and I understand that it's part of who you are, but I need to know if there's really room in your life for a relationship. For me. Julian reached across the table for her hand. Of course there is. You're the most important thing in my life, Vanessa. Am I? She asked gently. Because it doesn't always feel that way. When a crisis happens at work, everything else stops, including us. Julian looked troubled. That's the nature of what I do. People's livelihoods depend on my decisions, but that doesn't mean you're not important to me. I know, Vanessa said, and I'm not asking you to choose between your work and me. That wouldn't be fair. I'm just trying to understand if we can find a balance that works for both of us. Julian was quiet for a moment, considering her words. I don't have a perfect answer, he admitted finally. The truth is, my work will always have emergencies, situations that can't wait, but I can promise you this, I will always come back to you, always. Vanessa felt tears well up in her eyes. But is that enough? Living our lives in between your crises, loving each other across time zones and video calls? I think it can be, Julian said, squeezing her hand, if we both want it badly enough. If we make the most of the time we do have together. And what about a family someday? Vanessa asked. Children need consistency, presence. They need a father who's there for soccer games and school plays, not just someone who calls from foreign countries. The question seemed to catch Julian off guard. You've thought about having children with me? Of course I have, Vanessa said. Haven't you? Julian's expression softened. Yes, more than you know. He stood up and came around to her side of the table, kneeling beside her chair. When I was in Singapore, all those long nights in the office, do you know what kept me going? The thought of coming home to you, the dream of a future together, a real home, a family, a life built on something more meaningful than business deals and profit margins. Vanessa looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there. Really? Really, Julian affirmed. These past months with you have changed me, Vanessa. Made me realize that all the success in the world means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with. Someone who loves you for yourself, not for what you can give them. Vanessa touched his face gently. I do love you for yourself, Julian, but I need to know that loving you won't mean always waiting for you to come back from somewhere else. Julian took both her hands in his. I can't promise there won't be more trips, more crises that need my attention. But I can promise to make changes, to delegate more, to make our relationship a priority, not something that gets pushed aside when work calls. Do you mean that? Vanessa asked. With all my heart, Julian said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I was going to wait for a more romantic moment, but maybe this is exactly the right time. Vanessa's heart began to race as Julian opened the box to reveal a beautiful diamond ring, elegant but not ostentatious, exactly to her taste. Vanessa Carter, Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. These past months have been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what truly matters, not wealth or success or status, but love, honesty, and genuine connection. I want to build a life with you, a real life with a home that feels warm and full of love, with children someday, with all the ups and downs and everyday moments that make a marriage real. He took a deep breath. Will you marry me? Vanessa felt tears streaming down her cheeks. Despite all her doubts, all her fears about their different worlds, she knew in that moment that she wanted to say yes. That whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache with joy. When they broke apart, both smiling through tears, Julian said, I have one more surprise. Another one? Vanessa laughed. I'm not sure my heart can take it. Julian led her to the couch and retrieved his briefcase. From it, he pulled out a folder of documents. I've been doing a lot of thinking while I was away. About us, about the future, about what really matters. He handed her the folder. Vanessa opened it to find legal papers, complex documents that she couldn't immediately understand. What is this? She asked. I'm restructuring. My company, Julian explained. Creating a new leadership team. People I trust to handle the day-to-day operations and many of the crises that used to require my personal attention. Vanessa looked up at him in surprise. You're stepping back from your company? Not entirely, Julian clarified. I'll still be CEO, still involved in major decisions, but I'm creating a structure that doesn't depend solely on me, one that will allow me to have a more balanced life. With you? Julian, I never asked you to do this, Vanessa said, overwhelmed by what this meant. I never wanted you to change who you are. Julian took her hands. You didn't ask, and that's exactly why I'm doing it, because I want to. Because these weeks away from you made me realize that no business success is worth sacrificing a life with the woman I love. Vanessa could hardly believe what she was hearing. But your company has been your life's work. It has been, Julian agreed. But now it's just a part of my life. An important part, but not the only part. Not anymore. Vanessa searched his face, looking for any sign of hesitation or regret. There was none. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything, Julian said. Well, except asking you to marry me, Vanessa laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. I love you so much, Julian Davenport. And I love you, Vanessa. Carter, soon to be Vanessa Davenport, if you like the sound of that. I do, Vanessa said, leaning in to kiss him again. When they heard the apartment door open, they broke apart to see Rose entering, returning from her book club. Mom. Vanessa called excitedly. We have news! Rose took in the scene before her. Her daughter's tear-stained, happy face, the engagement ring glittering on her finger. Julian's arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. I think I can guess, Rose said with a smile. But tell me anyway. We're getting married, Vanessa announced, holding out her hand to show off the ring. Rose embraced them both, tears of joy in her eyes. I'm so happy for you both. There's more, Julian said. We want you to move in with us once we find a place, a real home for all of us. Rose looked surprised. Are you sure? Newlyweds usually want their privacy. We're sure, Vanessa affirmed. We want you with us, Mom. Rose hugged her daughter again, too emotional to speak. Later that evening, after Rose had gone to bed, Julian and Vanessa sat together on the small balcony of the apartment, looking out at the city lights. I've been thinking about where we should live, Julian said, his arm around Vanessa's shoulders. Not the penthouse, it never felt like a home. Maybe a brownstone in Brooklyn? Near the learning center? Vanessa looked up at him, still amazed by how thoroughly this man had upended her life and her heart. That sounds perfect. We could have a small wedding, Julian continued. Nothing extravagant, just family and close friends. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Julian Davenport eschewing extravagance. Who are you and what have you done with my fiancé? Julian laughed. I told you. You've changed me. For the better, I think. I think so too, Vanessa said, leaning her head against his shoulder. Though I want you to know that I fell in love with who you already were. The changes are just a nice bonus. Julian kissed the top of her head. We've both changed. That's what happens when you find the right person. They don't just love you, they help you become the best version of yourself. Very philosophical, Mr. Davenport. I have my moments, Miss Carter. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the night air and the warmth of being together again. Do you ever think about how this all started? Vanessa asked eventually. With you needing a fake date to your ex's wedding? Julian chuckled. Best business arrangement I ever made. I still can't believe I agreed to it, Vanessa said, shaking her head. It was so unlike me. Maybe some part of you knew, Julian suggested, that we were meant to find each other. Now you're just being romantic, guilty as charged. Julian turned to face her, his expression suddenly serious. But I do believe that, Vanessa. I believe we were meant to find each other, even if it happened in the most unlikely way. I believe that every decision I made, every success and failure, was leading me to that cafe, to that moment, to you." Vanessa felt tears well up again. "When did you become such a poet?" "When I fell in love with you," Julian said simply. 6 months later, on a perfect spring day, Julian and Vanessa were married in the garden of their new Brooklyn brownstone. It was a small ceremony with just 50 guests, a far cry from the lavish society wedding everyone had expected from Julian Davenport. Catherine and Charles were among the guests, their presence a testament to how completely Julian had moved on from his past. Catherine had approached Vanessa at the reception, offering genuine congratulations. "He's different with you," she observed, watching Julian chatting animatedly with Mario, who had catered the wedding. "Happier, more at peace." "We're good for each other," Vanessa replied simply. Catherine nodded. "I can see that. I'm glad he found you." The Learning Center had opened a month before the wedding, with Vanessa as director. Already it was making a difference in the community, offering programs for children who might otherwise have fallen through the cracks of the educational system. Julian had kept his promise, restructuring his company to allow for more balance in his life. There were still occasional crises that required his attention, still business trips that took him away from home, but they were fewer and shorter, and Vanessa always knew he would come back to her. As they danced together at their reception, Julian held Vanessa close. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied. "You?" "I have everything I never knew I needed," Julian said. "A real home, a purpose beyond making money, and a wife who loves me for me, not for what I can give her." "Well, the billions don't hurt," Vanessa teased. Julian laughed. "There's the woman I fell in love with, always keeping me humble." "Someone has to," Vanessa said, smiling up at him. The evening drew to a close. Julian and Vanessa stood on the steps of their new home, watching as the last guests departed. Rose had already gone inside, giving the newlyweds a moment alone. "So," Julian said, his arm around his wife's waist, "was it worth it, saying yes to my ridiculous proposal that day in the cafe?" Vanessa pretended to consider the question. "Well, let's see. I got a handsome husband, a beautiful home, a job I love, and the best mother-in-law in the world." "Best mother-in-law?" Julian asked, confused. "Your mother," Vanessa explained softly. "I never met her, but I feel like I know her through you. And I think she'd be so proud of the man you've become." Julian's eyes grew damp. "I think she would have loved you." "I know she would have," Vanessa said, "because you do. And that's all. That matters." Julian leaned down to kiss his wife, the unexpected +1 who had become the love of his life. They had faced challenges and would face more in the future. Their worlds had been different, their paths unlikely to cross. But fate or chance, or perhaps just the courage to take a risk on something real, had brought them together. And as they entered their home as husband and wife for the first time, both knew they were exactly where they were meant to be, with each other. The unexpected +1 had become the most important one of all, the end.